Knock at the Cabin is the newest movie from director M. Night Shyamalan, who also wrote it along with Steve Desmond and Michael Sherman, based on the book The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. Story time. I saw this after going to a theater to see a test screening of the upcoming Haunted Mansion reboot. I didn't get in, so they compensated me by giving me a free ticket to whatever. So I went from the Haunted Mansion to probably the exact opposite of that. You know, instead of describing the plot of the movie, I was originally planning to just put in a clip from an episode of Graham Norton that Shyamalan was on where he described the plot and everyone just fell silent when he was done. But I can't find that on YouTube, so now I have to describe it myself. So it's about a gay couple and their young daughter who go on vacation to an isolated cabin in the woods, which always goes great in movies. But they get held captive by a group of people led by Dave Bautista, who tells them that the world is going to end unless they sacrifice one member of their family. It's an interesting and disturbing concept, an idea you don't want to think about and wouldn't wish on your worst enemies. And that makes it a riveting experience. It isn't as unpredictable as you'd expect from M. Night Shyamalan, but maybe that's not the worst thing ever. I personally thought that the twists were the weakest points of his last two movies. And the movie also has some great acting from its cult members. Bautista delivers his lines with sincerity and the sympathy of somebody who really doesn't want to be doing this to his family. Between this and John Cena and Peacemaker, wrestlers lately have been really acting circles around The Rock. Shyamalan is famously a mixed bag. This is one of his good ones, but it does occasionally have some of its problems. The dialogue isn't always great, the opening scene revolves around the daughter, and many of her lines don't sound like something a child would say. And not all the actors are great. The family is less impressive. Or maybe it was just the skeptical father. Maybe the other father and the daughter were decent, but that guy dragged them all down. Actually, yes, that seems likely now that I remember some of their scenes without him. That guy was not a good actor. Like, distractingly so. He almost ruins every scene with his weird line deliveries. But by the end, it's a very haunting, bleak, and emotional movie, and the darkness of it all stuck with me for a little bit after it ended. This has a strong claim to potentially be the darkest horror movie of the year, even if it might not necessarily end up being among the best.
One ant
See, help me!
will rise above it all to prove that he's one in a million. DreamWorks Pictures and PDI present
It looks like this is it, just when I was starting to like you.
Ants.
Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Now, I've been underwhelmed by most of Marvel's movies since Endgame and was seriously considering waiting until this came to Disney Plus to save my money. The mixed reviews didn't help. I really only went because I wanted to go to the theater and they weren't playing anything better that I hadn't already seen. If it was raining all weekend, I probably wouldn't have gone, and next weekend I'd probably see Cocaine Bear instead. But it didn't rain, and I went to see it. And what a surprise! That day I was treated to a quality Marvel product, because I saw a couple episodes of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur beforehand. And then I saw this piece of shit. Yeah, this was a disappointment, even for my average standards. Close to the bottom of the MCU ranking. Worse than Phase 4. But still my 5th favorite movie of the year so far. Disclaimer, I've only seen 5 movies from this year. First off, the positives. I can tell there was imagination here. As the title suggests, this takes place in the quantum realm, and they fill this place with some really great concepts. Lots of cool designs for the landscape and creatures. And this takes over every frame of this movie once they enter that realm. This takes place in the microscopic realm, but it ironically feels like the biggest Ant-Man movie yet. But that scope and those visuals are also its downfall because, well, the effects suck. Everything is done with bad CGI. There have been reports of Marvel mistreating their VFX department and rushing them, and that has often been used to explain some of the lesser CGI in Phase 4. Now it comes to a head here. Every shot has special effects in them, and so many of them look really fake. I mean, why would you mistreat your VFX team when 90% of your movie is VFX? If you're gonna mistreat somebody, do it to a department that does nothing. I'm pretty sure this was meant to be Marvel's Avatar, except Avatar didn't look like crap. And the writing is also pretty cheesy, and there aren't any good effects to hide that. And even at its high points, it's also not really much different from what we've seen countless times before in countless other Marvel movies. And MODOK, one of the villains, looks really stupid. He's presumably the kind of thing that only looks good in the comics or cartoons. Maybe there is a way to make this look work in live action. This isn't it. Sure as hell not with these effects. How is it that the giant floating head villain in Shark Boy and Lava Girl still looks better than this? Word to the wise, if your version of MODOK looks this stupid, at least keep the mask on for just a little more of it. And he has a potentially emotional scene near the end that could have worked, but this is the Marvel Universe, so they need to fill it with jokes and ruin it. How appropriate. Such a joke of a villain can't even be taken seriously in this moment. After this scene, the guy right next to me laughed and said, "What the fuck is this movie?" When the movie ended, I overheard that same guy say that he can barely understand what was going on, and I guess I can't blame him. It's not confusing in the same way that most confusing movies are. The story's probably quite simple, but it's just, I guess, unclear what's going on. It's basically just bad guy wants to do bad things for no reason, and then stuff happens. It's just throwing stuff at the wall. A lot of times I couldn't understand the rules of this place. Most of the positive buzz from this movie is for Jonathan Majors as the main villain, Kang the Conqueror. He was okay, I guess. I guess he's sort of convincing as a bad guy, but he isn't really given a lot to work with. He doesn't really have any depth, and I couldn't really understand his motives. In fact, I only had a vague understanding of what he was even trying to do as a villain. Which I could probably ignore just a little more if he wasn't hyped up as the next Thanos or something. He'd pretty much just be another weak and forgettable MCU villain, but now he's a disappointingly weak and forgettable MCU villain. There's a post-credit tease for more of him in another Marvel product that I have more faith in. Post-credit, not mid-credit. This one should probably show what the big deal is. Hopefully. Please. This is the biggest Ant-Man movie, but also the worst. Come to think of it, I'm starting to realize that it pretty much shows me all the ways that I've been taking the other Ant-Man movies for granted. No, they're nowhere near the best in this universe, but they have some uniquely fun stuff in there. It's smaller scale in a charming way. It has good humor with all the stuff with everyday items being shrunk and grown, and the presence of Michael Pena. None of that stuff is here. Not even Michael Pena. So no, this isn't as funny. This is the second movie in the Marvel Universe to be rotten on Rotten Tomatoes after only Eternals. I appreciated Eternals for what it was. This, not so much. It's a bad start to Phase 5. It's basically how people who hate Marvel see these movies as. Bad CGI and a really cheesy corporate story. Most of the blame probably falls on the studio and not the filmmakers. I mean, they probably didn't know that it would look like this. A lot of the flaws in the writing could be forgivable if the rest of the movie didn't look that bad. But still, it makes the Ant-Man franchise bigger at the expense of what made it good and can't even recapture what made the bigger Marvel movies good.